My name is Dr. Marcia Saltzwedel, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines. So one of the questions you might have is, why do we need Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines? What would we ever use those for? Well, the Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines are important for us to use because there are a lot of injuries and even deaths for children in the agricultural environment. We know that every day about 33 children are seriously injured in agriculture-related incidents, and every 3 days a child dies in an agricultural-related incident. We know that the number of ag-related young workers that die in these incidents is higher in agriculture than in all other industries combined. And we also know that one of the reasons that this happens is because oftentimes youth in this environment are doing tasks that don't fit with their abilities. So one of the ways that we can try to lower the number of injuries and especially lower these fatalities to these working youth is to make sure that we assign work that matches that youth's abilities, not just their physical abilities, but also their cognitive abilities. And that includes their mental abilities and their personality traits. We also have to look at what type of training and supervision do they need, and what are the hazards we need to think about and the protective strategies. The image on the right is of an agricultural youth work guideline, and there are different sections on this guideline that address each one of these. So the box that says, can a youth do this job safely? That box actually addresses worker ability. Training and supervision are addressed by the middle section, adult responsibilities and supervision, and hazards and protective strategies are addressed in the bottom. Now keep in mind that these are either the most common hazards and protective strategies or the ones that are most likely to cause or prevent injuries. It's not an inclusive list. So if we're going to use an agricultural youth work guideline, how would we do that? And I would like to demonstrate that to you right now. And in order to do that, I'm going to use a scenario where a young man named Chad is going to be asked to drive a tractor from the machine shed out to the field. Now, Chad is 15 years old. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall. He's in really good physical shape. He's a great football player, and he loves to play baseball in the summer. He's very mature for his age, very seldom acts impulsively. He tells some really great stories when you listen to him. The kid's got a great personality, and he remembers lots of things from his younger years, and his stories are very rich in detail. He has completed all of the farm's training sessions, and he listens very closely when you talk to him, and he follows instructions really, really well. So when we think about these activities and what Chad's abilities are and what this task is that we want him to do, now we need to look at how do we get to this guideline in order to be able to assign work. And the guidelines are all available at the Cultivate Safety website. And so there's 3 links here to the Cultivate Safety website. I'm going to use the second link, which takes us directly to the work page. So when we get out to the Cultivate Safety work page, you will notice that in the upper right-hand corner, you have the ability to select language. You can select English, Spanish, and French. Any of the pages that are associated with this work tab here on Cultivate Safety have the ability to be translated into any one of those 3 languages. The Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines themselves are actually available through this first box. And when we click on that first box, you'll see that it brings up the sort page for the Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines. And you can see that there's actually 53 work guidelines on here. And you can sort through them either by age. We know that Chad is 15, so we could click there to see which tasks would be in consideration for him to do. We could choose category. We see down here we have tractor operations, and so maybe we would want to go that route. We could type in tractor up here and click the search button, and we could do it that way. Or, because I'm fairly familiar with this page and I know what it is, I know that the operating a tractor guideline is on page 3. So when we go out to page 3 on this particular site, we see the operating a tractor guideline. We also notice that there's 5 other guidelines that are what we call child development guidelines. And those guidelines talk about things from cognitive development, perceptual development, and a couple of others. Now, those are things that you might want to review before you assign a youth to work on an operator. But for today, we're just going to take a look at the operating a tractor guideline. You'll note that there's 3 different methods of interacting with this guideline. We can actually choose the interact button, we can choose the read button, or the print view button. Today I'm going to start by looking at the interactive button. When we look at the interactive button, what it does is it brings up questions that are related to what this youth's abilities are. So if we think back to what we talked about Chad being able to do, we need to answer these questions based on what we know about Chad. Well, we know Chad is 5'10", and given the tractor that we want him to operate, we know with that height, he can certainly reach and operate the controls while wearing a seatbelt. We know that he's in good physical shape because he plays football and baseball, so it certainly has the strength. We know that he is tall enough to have a good field of vision. And by the way, whenever you see anything in green on either the Interact guidelines or the READ guidelines, if you hover over that, it will give you a little bit more of an explanation of what we mean by that. So for good field of vision, you'll see the tooltip explains what we mean by good field of vision. In this particular instance, we know that Chad does have that. We also understand that Chad can understand and consistently repeat a 10-step process. And we're just going to say, because I know Chad and I'm going to tell you, he can recognize hazards and problem solves. He has the ability to react to hazards adequately. We already said that he's very mature for his age. We know that he avoids impulsive behavior, so we know that he does think things through. We can tell by the picture that we had of him that the way he's dressed, he didn't have any loose clothing, he didn't have any strings, and he didn't have long hair. So we know that he's avoiding all of those things. We are going to assume that we went through the Working Outdoors guideline with him. And if you do need to do that with your working youth, anything that is hyperlinked is underlined in blue, and just by clicking on that in either the Interact format or the Read format, you can actually go back out to that information and access it. Has the youth safely demonstrated the job 4 to 5 times? We know he has, because we said that he already has had all of the training. And we also know that because he's had training, he has a two-way communication link and he knows how to use that. So because we were able to click yes on everything here, when we click the next button, it will take us straight up to the next step, as you can see in the menu up here, to adult responsibilities. And in these particular features here, we will click the ones that as an adult supervisor, I am be able to follow. So I know the tractor's mechanically sound, I checked it out. I know that he can follow the developmental guidelines and he fits there, he's a good fit because I already reviewed those with him in mind. He's already demonstrated how to safely drive the tractor. We said he's had all his training, which takes care of these two, and you just go ahead and you click everything that he can do. If you have things that you can't do, and it will bring up a little box that will say, I can't, that you had forgotten to check things. And maybe it was purposeful, and then you just click continue. If it wasn't purposeful, you can go back and click them. If you're not able to fulfill your adult responsibilities, it will bring up a stop sign for you that says that this would not be a good job. And at that point, then you can either go back, you can pick a different guideline, or you can go to the next step just to see what else would have to happen. When you put in the youth's abilities for the job, if he was not able to, we were not able to check yes on most of those, it would have, the same thing would have happened. We would have been able to go back and make those 3 choices. I could either back up and think that through a little more and think, now are those his real abilities? Or I could have picked another guideline that I think he could have possibly done, or I could have just continued on to see what was important with the rest of them. Now, once we get to the end of the guideline, we can click Finish, and this is going to bring up that same type of information because, again, I skipped ahead, so I had unchecked boxes. But we can click the Finish, and it will then take you back to the read format of the guideline. And you'll see that the read format of the guideline as we scroll down this looks exactly like the print format that you saw in the earlier part of the presentation. If you view this read format of the guideline on a mobile responsive device, it will actually shrink it up and put the boxes in consecutive rows. This is a mobile-friendly website. So if we go back, this read button is the page we just got finished with. And if you go to the print and view page and take a look at that, that's where you have some additional options that we haven't been able to access yet on the interact or the read page. And those options actually enable us to customize our documents for any type of a population that we're working with. And we have a variety of different options that we can choose on these particular pages. And so when you look over to the right on our PDF options, not only can we select language up here, but for the actual PDF itself, we can select language. So let's say that we want this one in French. We can select the French language, and it brings it up in French. We also have an option for Spanish and an option for English as well. So we can change skin tones. We can either do light, medium, or dark. Let's say that we want to do that in a dark skin tone, and it will change the skin tone to dark in this particular instance. Let's say that we want to have a different color tractor. We can select a different color tractor as well. And so we have multiple options for creating our PDF, and then after we're done creating it, we have two options. We can either view it, and when we view it, we have the option of downloading it, or we can print it. And when we print it, we have the option of either saving it as a PDF or actually changing it to an actual printer and printing the guideline as well. In addition to all of the options that you have with the actual work guidelines on this work page, we have some additional options here as well. We have information on hired youth, we have information specific for working outdoors, and we have information that's available in booklets that contain youth work guidelines that are specific to topics and contain a lot of detail on how to use the guidelines. In addition, there's information across the bottom on different topics, including in the bending, lifting, and climbing topic. When you click on that one, you can see that we actually have videos, and these videos actually go step by step through each of these different tasks and explain how to do them safely, how to bend safely, how to lift safely, how to climb safely. We specifically developed these because we know that a large number of injuries to working youth and even to working adults are a result of improper bending, lifting, and climbing. In addition to the videos that actually describe this step by step and show it step by step, we also have fact sheets that list out those steps for bending, lifting, and climbing, and those fact sheets are also available in English, French, and Spanish. There's information also available on supervision, child development, benefits of farm work, communication plans. These information includes things like templates, includes instruction sheets, there's videos, there's all kinds of information related to these different topics in these areas. So I encourage you to go out and explore this when you have a few moments. Now, going back to our agricultural youth work guidelines, there's a couple of other things that you need to consider. And one of the things is that if you think back to when I talked about using that filter and talked about age, I said we could sort by Chad's age being 14 to 15 years old, and that would give us a list of guidelines that he might be able to do. And the reason that I specifically didn't say he could do is because we need to assess his abilities in order to determine if he can do a task. Because we know that not every 15-year-old is going to be alike. While Chad is very mature, very responsible, physically fit, and quite tall, the next 15-year-old may not be that mature. He may be shorter. He may not be able to reach the pedals on the tractor. He might be too impulsive for this job to be a good fit for him. And the other thing to keep in mind is that even though these are designed for youth and we typically think of 18 as an adult, there's nothing magic about that number either. Physically, psychologically, cognitively, youth continue to develop all the way up to age 25 and sometimes even beyond that. So you may want to continue using these guidelines even for youth that are 18, 19, 20, and beyond. Now in this session with these videos, this video described what the Youth Work Guideline was, why it's important to use them, and it actually demonstrated how to use the work guideline in one of the tasks. But we also have some additional materials that you might find useful. One of them is an Ag Youth Work Guidelines handout that actually describes the guidelines and explains how to access them. We have activity sheets that can be used. They provide scenarios like Chad's scenario that you can use to actually go through and use the guidelines and explore different formats and applications. And we also have an agricultural safety brochure in here. And this handout actually has information on statistics and protective strategies and resources that are free to use. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. And if you have any questions or any feedback or suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact me.